Hello!
A while ago I reviewed a Terminator Salvation based toy and mentioned that it was sort of a reissue of one they'd released years ago to tie in with Terminator 2, and I've had a lot of correspondence from people going, "What? Toys based on Terminator 2? But that was a film not for the kids!" And yes, you may have a strange accent, but you have a good point. In the 90s there was quite a lot of this stuff released, where it was sort of adult franchises into toy lines. You had RoboCop and Aliens and Terminator and all sorts of weird things. And I've gathered a few of them together so we can look at them and point and laugh. Because, hey, what else is there to do in life? Oh yeah, lots of stuff. Well, let's not worry about that, and instead, laugh at Arnie. Here he is, being all... what's that awful word for things to do with the governor? Gubernatorial, that's it. Oh, a horrible word. Anyway, here he is in his combat trousers and boots, which just happen to be exactly the same shade of green, and his vest, and he's pointing forward, probably saying, "I will return to this place at a later date," which is, of course, his catchphrase. Also, he does that. Yes, pull down his arm, and his entire face and body flies off, revealing that he has eaten a robot skeleton. Well, actually, it's some sort of Terminator. It's some sort of bio-flesh over a endoskeleton from the future. You know how the Terminator works. I don't quite know why they, Skynet, in its infinite robotic wisdom, decided to make one where it just literally all flies off, hits somebody in the face, and then they see he's a robot, and that probably blows the cover a little bit. Also, there's a frickin' great hole in his chest he can use to store an apple. Anyway, that's quite a nice start. Next up is arguably the most popular of said toys. Everybody had one of these, apparently. I didn't. I was too old, because I'm like a granddad or something. But yes, it's Arnie in sort of vague Terminator 2 type get-up, the biker gear, with all his shells around him, and half his face has been gnawed off by naughty rats, which is a bit of a shame for him, because, you know, he was going to go and see his mother for tea tomorrow, and she's going to be asking all sorts of questions. And look, his arm's been eaten away too. And inexplicably, he has a rod that comes out of his fist, which was actually something RoboCop had, not the Terminator, which confuses me. And when his arm comes off, did I mention that? And he can put on this completely pointless clamp, which presumably he has to carry around with him in a backpack, and again completely blows his human disguise, although having half his face blown away has probably done that already. There was also a third arm with some sort of missile launcher thing going on, but the missile has been lost to time, and also it's too big and looks stupid. Off you go. Next up, Arnie cosplaying as Mad Max or something. I mean, there's a real sort of post-apocalyptic 80s film vibe to this. Also, his stomach appears to be made out of 4 bits of veloured wood. Yeah, he just looks normal until you push the thing in his back and... yep, his face falls off again. Morning. A bit odd, that. And needless to say, he's got a rocket launcher in his chest. You push the thing the other way and the rocket flies out. But the rocket has been lost to antiquity. There we are. Go over there and pretend you're Mel Gibson. Next up, the evil Terminator. Well, he was evil depending on which film you're watching. The T-1000. This was a liquid metal thing. Now, of course, how can you, you know, portray a liquid metal, bizarre, interchangeable, super futuristic robot? Well, the answer is, apparently, you give him his biker form, give him a really weird posture thing going on, and make sure he has no backs of his knees. And what happens is, you pull down his head, and his arse flies off. That didn't happen before. I think this may have broken somewhat. Hang on. God, how does that fit? Like that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's come off the hinges. Yeah, his arse doesn't actually fly off. That would be the most bizarre action feature ever. Although it still is pretty weird. His head goes down like that, and his arse becomes a rocket. Actually, this isn't any less weird at all now I think about it. His arse becomes a rocket launcher. Yes, the rockets have been lost, but I really don't see how that one got past the design stage, you know. Oh man, Robert Patrick, I'm such a big fan of him. Yeah, and we get to make a toy out of him. I know, let's make his arse come off and shoot missiles, because that makes perfect sense. It also makes you understand why his hands are like that. Oh God, what am I doing? Weird. And the last one I've got of the Terminator figures is this quite pretty endoskeleton thing. Very clever design here, whereby the twisty bits here are very, very thick rubber, which gives them this sort of weird twanging action, a bit like those Kung Fu Karate Kid figures they made years ago. Chop, twist and kick or something. Also, there's light piping for the head. If you get a torch and shine the light through there, ooh, it looks like the eyes light up, because technically they do. Marvellous. It's Quite a nice little toy, that. These were only relatively cheap things when they came out. And, you know, they're not marvellously sculpted by any stretch of the imagination, but they're chunky and they do the job, and the kids can play with them without breaking, which means I can buy them on eBay years later and parade them in front of a camcorder like some sort of tit. Now, we mentioned RoboCop earlier. Let's have a look at a couple of RoboCop figures, this being the original one they sold. It was just called RoboCop, and it features the character RoboCop. Not rocket science, is it? This was reissued years later as part of the RoboCop and the Ultra Police, which was like a weird television series aimed more at kids. But this one originally was indeed supposed to be a movie tie-in. It's not a bad thing at all. I think a little bit of articulation to it. It's quite nicely sculpted and moulded. It's got his ridiculous long gun. And even has the bizarre feature of you can take his hat off. And look, it's Murphy, or whatever it was that he said. And you can even take his chest plate off and look at that. And if I recall, this originally came with battle-damaged versions of these, which I've probably got in a drawer somewhere. But that's pretty good. I mean, for a little cheap figure, very nicely done. Unfortunately, it doesn't no, it does! Look, it does have the spike that comes out of the fist. Hang on, if I can get it going. There we are. What more could you ask for? In the film, it was some weird data spike thing he used to, I don't know, interface with computers. And of course all he actually did of use was impale people on it like a big killer robot. He is a robot, he is a cop. That's how the theme tune goes. And I've got another RoboCop figure. It looks exactly the same without the gun, but it's a bit chunkier, and wait for it, you press the button and it makes noises. There was one that went rat-a-tat-tat. This does not go rat-a-tat-tat. This one plays the well, it just makes a siren alarm effect while his eyes flash, actually, which is a bit crap. Actually, it appears to just play the death screams of RoboCop. I'm really glad I described it first. Yeah, mental note. Remember to check the batteries of these things before recording them. That's actually quite frightening. Let's go again. Yeah, it's just like him screaming. Put me out of my misery, which is pretty much the plot to RoboCop 2. Anyway, get over there. Let's get back to Terminator-y stuff and far more recent toys. Going back to Terminator Salvation, in fact. You may remember John Connor is in it, played by that there Christian Bale, and they released what may be one of the worst action figures ever. Now, the price of these figures has gone through the frickin' roof. This was like £6 when it was released. For this shitty little 3 3/4 inch figure, which looks pretty crap and has, it must be said, fucking terrible proportions on its legs. Look, he's got these weird little mini legs under his knees. Looks like he's some sort of slightly mutant man. But the worst thing is, of course, the likeness of Christian Bale. Yes, this is supposed to be John Connor. And yes, he's got some sort of hockey armour on, but yeah, apparently, for some reason or other, Christian Bale didn't get into signing off his likeness quick enough, and they made all the figures and had to cover their faces. So yeah, that is absolutely fucking shocking for about £6. But poor old Christian Bale gets off even worse on the action figure front. They released these 3 3/4 inch figures of the Dark Knight, old Nolan's take on Batman there. Face is quite good, actually. Looks quite a lot like Bale from what you can see of it. Really nice detailing. It's all quite nicely done. They re-released them again individually for the Dark Knight film. No, the Dark Knight Rises film. And unfortunately, the price was absolutely ludicrous. I had seen them sold for £8, or they go for about £7. And it's really, I mean, it's nicely sculpted. There's no paint on it other than around the mouth, which is very, very basic. Ludicrously expensive for what it is. I can't imagine these selling at all. I always expected them to appear in Poundland at some point. They never have, although they did appear very cheap in Tesco, so I bought a load to show you. Yes, they made a load of these, but they didn't make interesting characters like, you know, Batman and Catwoman and all that, although apparently there is a Catwoman one, but it was only available in certain shops in America. Instead, you just get different coloured Batmen. I hate it when they do that. Do kids really want 5 different Batmen? No, they want Batman and a couple of other characters, not weird lemon-flavoured Batman. Or even worse, inexplicably, I want to say aquamarine, but it's probably a little dark for that, Batman. And they just paint it slightly differently and put it out, and it looks absolutely poop. And my God, far too much money. Hey, it's the ghost of Batman. This has got to be the cheapest. For about £15 or something utterly ludicrous, you could get them with an action feature. Well, I say action feature, it's more like a... I think the technical term is deluxe figure, but basically it comes with this weird serrated coffin that you can put him in. Press a button and... Oh look, he pops out. And now he's got his flying machine. He would have to be a ghost to actually be lifted in the air by two very small fans. So yeah, they've taken the whole idea of the movie, moved along a few paces and made some absolutely ridiculous cheap tat that they were selling off for ludicrously expensive money. The only nice thing is you can put him in it again and press the other button and it spits him out without it. Haha, Batman, you frickin' freak. The only good thing that came out of those actually was this one, which is quite nice. It's sort of this entirely re-sculpted version, rather than just being the same frickin' figure in different colours. And it does have this kind of still Nolan-y Batman look, as if he did have some sort of heavier armour. I quite like that. What I don't like is the crap it came with. If you thought the other thing was bad, prepare yourself for... bloody great construction claw on his shoulder that would just push him over because it's far too heavy. Batman. Thanks for that, lads. But don't worry, it got worse. They decided they did need to release one villain, and so they sculpted a new figure of Bane, which doesn't fit at all with the style of the others, has ridiculous gorilla proportions. I mean, look at those arms, for crying out loud. He could pull his shoes off without bending down. And it's got this nasty, almost Disney-esque paint scheme. In fact, he's probably going to break into song at any moment. Your punishment must be more severe, your punishment must be more severe, your punishment must be more severe. You have my permission to die. And then there'd like be a singing crab or something with him, because there always is in Disney films. And that's about it really, apart from this Wonder Woman figure. A friend gave me, he said, oh, you got to show this on the internet. I'm like, well, it's just a cartoony figure of Wonder Woman. And he said, yeah, but Wonder Woman had an invisible plane, do you remember that? I'm like, yes, that is a well-known thing. Wonder Woman inexplicably had an invisible jet plane. God knows how she found it to sit in. Yeah, what is the point? How does that relate to this figure? Well, he said, imagine if she was flying it and you just saw her like flying through the air because the rest of the jet was invisible. Yep, this is like a thought experiment, not going to be very visually interesting for the audience. He said, ah yeah, pose her as if she's flying her airplane. Okay. There she is, she's got the controls, sitting down. Oh my Christ. So you would see her, this flying through the air. I mean, what would you do if you saw that? Well, you'd marry it, is the answer to that. But what the bloody... I mean, I can understand why they've done it, so the point of articulation hits up on a bikini bottom there and doesn't, mess up the lines of it. But it does also mean you've got this bizarre articulation, which makes no sense. I'm just going to throw that over there because it makes me feel slightly ill at the thought of all the pulled muscles. And finally... here's something completely irrelevant that I bought to do with a Halo blind bag video and then forgot I had. This is a really freaky thing from my childhood, a Fisher-Price Adventure People figure, but a weird sort of translucent one of a sort of naked woman with just a controlled chest on it and really freakish eyes and hair. The reason I got it for the Halo thing, of course, is it actually looks really like Cortana, some weird, like Cortana's aunt or something, a sort of more motherly version of an older lady being Cortana. There we are, sit over there. And if you don't know what Cortana is, I really wish I'd explained it beforehand, but I'm not going to now. Go and look it up, why don't you? Actually, if you do want some homework, have a look at the Aliens figures they released, because some of those are fantastic, particularly the Bishop one. But I couldn't be bothered to buy any of those, they're too expensive.